Hello, David McMillan here, former smuggler of just about anything that would go into a suitcase or could be crammed into the cargo bay of a ship. I have to jump to the defense of somebody here, or organizations really, and that is messengers, the great platforms. Yes, I get Google, Facebook, what's the other one? Oh, even Instagram, I guess. Anyway, you know all the people I'm talking about. And why am I defending them? Because people want to shoot the messenger. Take a little look at this bit. It's from a BBC story about the really bad treatment that domestic servants get in Kuwait. As you probably know, in that part of the world, effectively it's almost like slavery. They get the jobs as domestic servants, usually young women from the Philippines, India, Africa even, and they don't go out much, if at all. They can only use, well, it really depends on the whim of their masters. They work around the clock, just about, certainly up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're allowed to sleep, but they're not allowed to communicate much. Their passports are kept aside by their owners, and they are their owners, the people who buy them. If they're allowed to use a mobile phone to speak with family, it's given to them for a limited period, about once a month. But the story that was being run really didn't hinge on the mistreatment of these people.
Is illegal. Booming new industry where domestic workers are bought and sold online. All you need is a Google or Apple smartphone.
The communication that was used to sell the services of the servants was done on a platform for an application for advertising for anything. It could be, clothing or equipment or air conditioners or cars, but part of it was for domestic servants, and they referred to those people as being for sale. I think that they could have found a better word, but really, what else is there? Because they, in fact, were sold on. And also, there's an acceptance that this was quite a reasonable thing to do. Now, of course, they had to have some way of communicating with each other. And why not that? If they put up a telephone number on a piece of paper and stuck it to a lamppost, would the telephone be blamed? Here we have a young woman complaining about the new laws in Kuwait, which say that domestic servants have to have 1 day off a week and have access to, or even their own, mobile phone, a cell phone, to communicate with their family or whomever they wish. And the young woman seems outraged. She says, well, what next? As though this is absolutely going too far. Sure, this reprehensible behaviour is bad, but I still can't see why the reports of this and other things like it, where the media platforms are being used for communications, are blaming the Silicon Valley bigwigs.
بقى لازم يكون معاها موبايل. الدنيا باظت فيها.
شلون يكون عندك خادم بالبيت ويكون جوازه عنده؟ ولا لا، الشيء الأدهى والأمر إن كل أسبوع لها يوم أوف كل أسبوع.
The title for the report was Silicon Valley Online Slave Market. I mean, that's really a stretch to drag Silicon Valley in California over to Kuwait somehow, simply because they were the operators, not even of the application does the selling. There are many applications that sell and trade things. Facebook have their own marketplace, but, well, in the UK we have Gumtree and another one for housing, and of course there's Spock. Would Spock get the blame for selling what might amount to certain misbehaviour by some of its customers? I don't think so. They might have to take down an ad that was selling guns, but if somebody turned out to be deceptive, if somebody was conning somebody else, unless they were uncovered, nobody would ask them to do anything on principle that We don't like the kind of people you allow to use your services. From the late 1800s, when the telephone was introduced, there were people who were saying it's not only intrusive, but it's fearful because anybody can call you and tell you anything, and they might be lying. Were the telephone companies to blame for this? In the early days, some people felt so, apart from the fact they thought they might explode. And then there was television, and that was intrusive and an evil genius and all of that. But that sort of faded away. It seems that the biggest operator is always the biggest to blame, even though they really don't and shouldn't have to control the behavior of everybody that uses their soapbox. If I put up in Hyde Park in London a wooden platform and call it Speaker's Corner, there was such a thing once, and allow people to speak there. What am I allow? I mean, they can get up and speak. I don't say yes or no. I just help them have a voice. I give them 3 feet above the heads of the crowd so they may be heard. Am I then responsible for whatever is spoken? No, I think not. Another thing, do you really want to force companies like Facebook and Google to become the moderators of every communication that goes through, as though they're some kind of background telephone switchboard operator who says, "Oh, no, you've gone too far. Oh, I don't think I can allow you to say that to your girlfriend." Or, "No, that's an offer for a car I wouldn't accept. I'm not going to allow you to make that telephone call." You don't want them in that position. And there's another good reason for leaving things alone. Let's just say you close down the online slave market, as they call it. Now, that means the transactions are going to be done by some other means of communication, probably by some kind of WhatsApp group call, I suspect, and they'll get blamed soon enough, but that will be another thing. If the visible trading place is closed down and driven underground, and I know what happens underground, then things get worse. Nobody can really see what's going on. In other words, if this domestic servant slave market then shifts to be handled by covert agencies where people just telephone each other, what have you got available, how much do I have to pay, then the prices go up, and in effect the servants get treated worse, because then there is no record of it. There is no... the real complaint was their photos were there. How embarrassing it may be, but at least you can identify the victims in this case. If it all changes to some dark voice on the end of a telephone, which is where these things will be pushed, then there's no way of tracing what happens. The cost will be higher to the people wanting the servants. That means the wages to the servants will be even more secretive and much less, and their treatment worse, because they'll feel, the people, like they're operating in a place where there are no rules, at least through WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever it might be. There is the sense that it is part of a community of some sort, and therefore, even if those standards are bad and misguided and really quite wrong, they are what's accepted. And so if they change, they change visibly. Drive something underground and you know what happens. When something's prohibited, you get people like me popping up. And you don't want that, do you? Nope. Don't shoot the messenger.